What will life be like for Christians in America after November 5th? Obviously, much of that depends on the election result. So what are the big issues believers should weigh when they head to the polls? Our good friend Tony Perkins is president of the Family Research Council, and he joins us now from Washington, D.C. Tony, always great to see you. Hey, I want to start with the assault on the American family. Look, men in women's sports, boys and girls' locker rooms. Do you think that could intensify if the left takes power on November 5th?
Without question, Eric, we've been seeing that. In fact, you were just talking about it in your previous segment. What is happening here is that the left is pushing a radical agenda to confuse children, to destroy the relationship between parent and child, and to suppress any type of opposition, which is coming primarily from a moral perspective, which would be a biblical perspective. So I think Christians, Bible-believing Christians, have a lot to be concerned about as we move into this election and beyond.
One of those concerns, Tony, is being able to speak out about this gender madness, the trans madness. Are you concerned about the ability to express our religious freedoms under a Harris-Walz administration and freedom of speech generally? I think of a guy like Elon Musk, what he's doing at X, you figure he'll be on their target list as well.
Without question, we've seen this over the last 4 years, so we can't expect to see anything but more of it, given even Vice President Kamala Harris's own comments. I mean, last week she was asked about the issue of abortion, which is her number one issue. That should be telling Christians something. That her number one issue, with the Middle East on fire, with inflation going through the roof, with the border wide open and America being invaded, her number one issue is abortion. She was asked this question, and I want to quote because I want to get it right. This was from NBC, from Haley Jackson. Asked her a question: what concessions would be on the table? Religious exemptions when it comes to abortion? That would be like healthcare providers, doctors, nurses. Would they be exempt from having to participate in this? This is what she said: I don't think we should be making concessions when we're talking about a fundamental freedom to make a decision about your own body. What she's saying is here, abortion trumps everything. Second to that would be her whole transgender agenda, that transgender ideology. There's no room in a Harris world for religious belief being acted upon by Orthodox Christians.
Yeah, Tony, you make a great point. I've never seen Kamala Harris get so passionate as when she talks about abortion. That said, what would you say, Tony, to Christians? And look, George Barna recently released a report saying tens of millions of Christians may stay home and not vote this election. What would you say to followers of Jesus who are thinking of sitting this one out?
If you sit this one out because you're saying, well, you know what, I just don't know my vote's going to count, or I really don't like the choice that's before us. Look, here's what's going to happen. Kamala Harris has made very clear what her agenda is. And if you want to put into place someone who has stated their number one priority is to kill unborn children, then stay home. And you'll be a participant in the outcome of this election. We have to vote our values, biblical values, not our values, biblical values. That means we have to work through that process of determining who most closely aligns. Now, are they going to be perfect? No, not in this election. We're not going to have perfect alignment. But there is a clear contrast between the two major presidential candidates. And of course, that's just the top of the ticket. You go down to congressional races, you go down to House, state races, school board races. There are clear contrasts, and we have tools available, Eric, for that. If people want to get access to that, we have a toolkit for voters. They can text the word toolkit to 67742. That's 67742. And we have the contrast, we have the comparisons, and even a personalized voter guide based upon zip code. Christians must vote. As Americans, we have a right to vote. As Christians, we have a responsibility to vote.
And as Christians, we can literally swing the election, especially in swing states. Tony, about 30 seconds before the break, then we will bring you right back. What do you make of these latest claims from the left, branding Donald Trump as a fascist and his followers, supporters as essentially Nazis? We've heard it before, but they're going to the well once again with a week left.
Well, it's because when you can't defend your positions, you have to demonize your opponents. This is a part of dehumanizing the opposition. And what's frightening, Eric, history tells us where this leads. We've seen this before. we have to push back on this dangerous rhetoric.
Coming up, more with Tony Perkins. Well said as always. What does this election mean for the free world and the state of Israel? More with Tony Perkins after the break. Don't move. Welcome back to Stakelbeck Tonight. We're talking to Tony Perkins, a watchman on the wall in Washington, D.C. as president of the Family Research Council. Tony, I look at the world right now and I see Russia, China, Iran, North Korea on the march, and it seems that the United States has abdicated its position as leader of the free world, and it seems that the most evil forces fill that vacuum. Can we reassert ourselves and have that kind of influence once again to lead and not lead from behind?
Well, Eric, you've got your finger on the pulse. You've got a good understanding of international issues, and you're absolutely right. America has slipped, and as a result, that vacuum has been filled. Can we reassert ourselves? Yes, but it's going to take a determination to show strength and determination. What we're seeing from the Biden-Harris administration really imposing on Israel is this failed containment policy, that somehow we can keep things, kind of from going, haywire in the Middle East just by telling Israel to calm down, be still, don't defend yourself, don't strike back. When in fact, what Israel is doing is trying to establish a managed peace by eliminating the threat. And quite frankly, they're doing a good job. We could learn something from Israel when it comes to eliminating your enemies.
Yeah, I think Israel is doing the free world a favor, needless to say. Tony, you're in D.C. You've got your ear to the ground. What are you looking for next week? We're a week out, of course. Any trends you're seeing among the electorate, among the body of Christ, Christians voting, anything we should watch out for over the next week that you see is a very important trend?
Well, some early news that is positive is that we're seeing almost historic levels of early voting. And it's usually leans kind of Democrat, liberal, but this year we're seeing more Republicans voting early, which is a good sign. It shows that there is enthusiasm in this election. That's a positive thing. So it's going to come down to turnout. You look at all the polls, and it's narrowly divided right now. But, Eric, things that people need to remember is that it's not just the presidential that's on the ballot. We've got Congress. The balance of Congress is going to be decided in this election. We've got state legislatures in certain states that are on the ballot. We have school boards on the ballot. So people need to be informed, and they need to vote. And I cannot underscore enough how important it is that we vote. Some of these races are actually going to be decided by just a handful of votes. One vote could literally make a difference in some of these races. So it's extremely important that we show up and we vote.
Incredible. What does the United States, Tony, look like after November 5th? I know it's tough to say. We don't know what's going to go down a week from now, but is there any chance? People talk so much about the nation being so polarized, and obviously there's an assault against Judeo-Christian biblical values. Any chance for any semblance of unity going forward after November 5th? Or will it's two opposite sides, and the left is so radical now, it's tough to bridge that gap.
It is. I think this is why we need to be praying. We do need to come back together as a nation. This is unsustainable, where we don't even have debates really anymore. If you watch, even cable networks where we used to have debates between left and right, now we just have rants. And we've got to get back to where we can have disagreements, and we could do so civilly. One ray of hope I saw in this election cycle was the vice presidential debate. It was actually refreshing to see two different, obviously, worldviews in this debate, but it was civil. It was respectful. It was policy oriented and focused, not personality. That was encouraging. We need to get back to that, where we can disagree, but do so in such a way that we respect one another as human beings created in the image of God, but also as Americans. And we've got a lot of ground to cover to get there, Eric, but it's something we need to be praying for and working for.
Amen. Tony, about a minute left. Last question. Seems President Trump in his first administration had an open door for believers, for followers of Jesus. Would you anticipate that in a second Trump term, that Christians would have a say, a larger say certainly than in a Harris-Walz administration under President Trump?
I do. I do. I think, there's been some disagreements on some policy issues in this election cycle, and I'm not going to cover that up. I've had conversations with the president, but there is no question the president has a respect for Christians. He has made clear that he wants to give Christians the protection to not just practice their faith between the four walls of a church, but to live it out, to teach it to their children, and to conduct themselves, whether it's in the marketplace, whether it's in the public square, according to those biblical beliefs. And so, yes, I do believe Christians will have an access, but I think the contrast is stark when you look at what life will be like for Christians between the two different candidates that are running for president.
Yeah, Tony, well said. Really no gray areas here for sure. Tony Perkins, always great to have you. Keep up the great work at the Family Research Council. God bless, Tony. We'll see you again soon.